Happy Monday, Terrika Foster-Brasby. Thank you for joining me today. So happy to be in studio again with you in Stamford. We are going to talk about last night's game, and so you know there's no person I'd rather talk about the last game yesterday of day one of the WNBA semifinal rounds, because it's a team that you cover and know so well, the Connecticut Sun, and their game against the Minnesota Lynx, which was a thriller. So for those two reasons, we're gonna start there first, okay? What a sensational game. And I think, you know, a lot of people, I think, were very focused on the Aces and the Liberty. They had the 3 p.m. game, which on a Sunday, for our purposes, is like the prime slot. It was on ABC. So there was a lot more attention on that game. Two teams, I think, in the Sun and the Lynx, who often feel a little disrespected, I would say, right? And so those two teams against each other, but like people were sleeping, because I think those of us around the community knew this was still gonna be a really, really good series. And it did not disappoint. And I expect, it was a close game, the Connecticut Sun pulled it out, they got a 3-point victory, but I expect, Terrika, that the rest of the games in the series will look probably similar to this, going down to the end, being close, being a gritty series. I don't think we're gonna see like these high-flying offensive games. I could be wrong, but that's what I expect. So what did you make of what you saw yesterday?
First off, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I'm not making this up. I was quite literally sitting on the edge of my seat the entire time. Like, why are y'all got my pressure up this high? But it was an incredible display of defense. Like, this was a defensive masterclass between both of these teams, which is the reason why they were the #1 and the #2 defense respectively coming into this postseason. That had been their strong suit the entire season. So we kind of knew that it wasn't going to be a high scoring game. You know, in the 70s feels about right for both of these teams, but I wanted to see which defense was going to be the one to pull it out, because you knew that that was going to have to be a large part in who was going to be victorious. And it was a combination of not only it being strong defense from Connecticut at the end, because it's not always about how you start, but certainly about how you finish, but it was also them doing something that typically Minnesota does very well, and that's shoot threes. Marina Mabrey, boy, oh boy, and I know we'll probably get into that a little later in the conversation, but it was just a display of defensive prowess, and Connecticut really got the better of Minnesota based on that towards the end of the game, which truly made the difference in this one.
Well, yeah, let's go there. You talked about Marina Mabrey. So 6 made threes for Marina Mabrey, right? Yeah. She actually shot better from 3 than she did from the 2-point line. So she has been such an incredible addition to this roster. And this midseason acquisition looks like it's really paying dividends. I was asked, I did a preview about this series, and I was asked who would be the X factor. And I thought that Marina Mabrey would definitely be an X factor. But you know, I also thought that another X factor could potentially be Dejanay Carrington. Both of them really put on a show yesterday. You know, look at this. Here you go in game 1. Dejanay Carrington had 13 points, 6 of 12 field goals, 1 of 2 from 3, 9 boards. She grabbed 9 rebounds and had 4 assists. And then we already talked about Marina Mabrey, 20 points on the night, 7 for 19 overall shooting, 6 of 11 from 3, over 50% from 3-point range, 5 boards and 3 assists to add to it. When you're getting this kind of production, you can't ask for anything more. And this is why I said, like, these two will both be X factors. I had Dejanay as more of like a defensive X factor, but here she is really contributing on the offensive end. There's just absolutely no reason, and we know how great Dejanay is. That's why she is the only guard to make WNBA all defensive first team, right? But there's no reason that the Lynx allowed her to grab 9 boards. That's just unacceptable.
Well, she has considerably been one of the best two-way players and two-way guards in this league for a couple of years now. This is just her 4th season, but her rebounding ability is one of the reasons why I voted her Defensive Player of the Year. Yes, kill me, sue me. I was the one who voted Dejanay Carrington Defensive Player of the Year. But I stand by that because, number one, I know that statistically post players are always going to show up more on the stat sheet. And this year, obviously, Asia Wilson had an incredible number one in blocks, steals, and rebounds. Amazing. Fee, who actually won Defensive Player of the Year, you can't take anything from what she and how she played as a defender this year. To me, it was based on impact, right? And when I look at the impact that Dejanay Carrington had over and over and over again from the guard position, which included getting rebounds, which includes getting out there and getting steals. It's good for taking people lunch money, right? To me, her impact defensively is always there and has always been there, but it's often overlooked. But she's been tasked with guarding the best perimeter players on every team that Connecticut has faced. And if you look at their numbers based on their typical average, you can see that she gives them the fits, and that's what makes her so special. However, she has never lost her ability to perform on the offensive end, and I think that that's important. It is why I put her and players like Benijah Laney in the category of being some of the best two-way players that we've seen in this league, because they can do it all on both ends. Marina Mabrey, however, and I've said this multiple times, I think she has really found a home in Connecticut because of what they ask her to do. They ask you to simply be our spark. They want you to simply come off the bench and be our spark. And she does that with ease. Now, I hate to think that they have become so dependent on Marina Mabrey to score that if there is a situation where she doesn't have a good game, that they feel offensively stagnant. But I feel like what she's done is not only has she come off the bench and give them great production, specifically from the three-point line, but she's helped to fuel other players like a Veronica Burton, for example, who I think is an incredible addition to this team that doesn't get talked about as much. She helps to fuel that second unit. She helps to fuel Olivia Nessina-Dota when she's in the game. They play off of each other. But this is a Connecticut team that has balanced scoring from the offensive end. You look across the board, and at any given day, you'll have 14 from one, 17 from another, 15 from another. They're a balanced team as it relates to that.
Well, they are. And we're talking about some of the role players, but we know everything starts on that team with the engine, Alyssa Thomas, and also with DeWanna Bonner. And they were both actually incredible. DeWanna Bonner also had a milestone yesterday, right? She's played the most playoff games in WNBA history. What is it, 83?
83.
Is that right? So, and then look at this stat line again from Alyssa Thomas, a near triple-double again. We just take these for granted, 17, 10, and 9. And so they were both so amazing yesterday. DeWanna Bonner, not necessarily a big offensive night for her. She still had 10 points. She had a double-double, but 11 rebounds. Again, in total, the Connecticut Sun had 39 rebounds to the Minnesota Lynx only 32. And the rebounding has been Minnesota's Achilles heel all season. And I think cleaning up the glass was a big difference in this game. And so we talked about the Sun. They got the W. They came in and stole home court advantage. But what about the Minnesota Lynx, right? We expect that this Connecticut Sun defense is really going to, whoever they play, however you normally play, they are going to prevent you from playing the way that you normally play. Fee had a decent night, but when you talk about a player who was averaging 40 points in the first round, and I didn't expect that to continue, but she was even held under her regular season average. She averages a little over 20 points a game, 19 points last night. She did grab 9 boards, but she just wasn't as efficient, wasn't as effective as she normally is. And we saw on that last possession, she couldn't even she got off a shot, but it wasn't a real shot.
That is a tribute to the defense of Connecticut, because her primary defenders yesterday were Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner, and they did a great job of making every possession difficult for her. She was 3 of 11 from that area, and again, you cannot overstate how critically important it is for a team like Minnesota to understand that this is a team that this Connecticut team has been a team that has kind of in a way been their Achilles heel all season, right? They were 2-1 against this team, 1-2, against this team all season long. And the first and the last game were very close, very tight matchups. The first game actually in the regular season even went to overtime. And so I say this to say that you know what to expect when you're playing this team. So they knew that shots were not going to be easy. They knew that getting to the paint was not going to be easy. So what does that mean? That means you need players to step up on the offensive end, like a Kayla McBride, like a Courtney Williams, like Bridget Carlton, who started hitting threes deep and late. But again, that goes to the point that I made when we first started this conversation, is that Connecticut managed to do something that Minnesota typically does well, because not only does Minnesota defend well, but they typically shoot very well from three. And I think Connecticut understood that coming in this game and made it very difficult for them to do that. However, if they can figure out how to get back on that train before Tuesday, and God knows I don't know, but if they can figure that out, I think they got a good chance of tying this thing up before it heads back to Connecticut.
Well, you mentioned Bridget Carlton. She was sensational yesterday. 17 points, 6 of 10 from the field, 3 of 6 from three. So she was really, really good.
Yep.
But that's it. Unlike Connecticut, whose role players stepped up, it was not the same for the Minnesota Lynx. Alana Smith, someone who has been really key for them this year.
Yep.
She did what she did normally on the defensive end, okay? So, she grabbed some boards, she had a couple of steals. She was great defensively, but she was really, really quiet on the offensive end, okay? Yep. She only had 6 points in this game, 2 of 9 from the field, 0 of 4 from three. She just was not having an offensive impact, and they need her to. Yeah. She cannot just be someone who they go to for defense. And we talked about Fee earlier, but you count on superstars to sort of step up more in the postseason, and so they're going to have to figure out a way to allow her to do that. Cheryl Reeve is going to have to definitely come up with an adjustment, because you already talked about the defense being played on her. But I think really the key, honestly, was Courtney Williams. She's really going to have to play a better game next game. She's their mid-range assassin, as you know. The shots were not falling for her last night. I felt like she even took too many, considering the way her shot was falling, so she's going to have to find some other ways to affect the game. Kayla McBride is also interesting, because while she wasn't that bad last night in terms of overall, she gave you 12 points, 5 of 11 from the field, but she only, check this out, Terrika, 1 of 5 from three. They need Kayla McBride shooting. Like, Kayla McBride getting 12 points from three-pointers versus getting them off of two-pointers is a completely different thing. It means something different for this team. And so, Courtney Williams, the 3 for 12, that's just not going to work for this team. Yeah. And so I think the key is these two players, Kayla and Courtney, they have to have better games next game.
Yeah, and they've got to do that same thing when Fee is not on the court. If there was a moment, a stretch in that game where Fee was not on the court and we needed Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams to truly step up into those positions, and to your point, they just didn't. So offensive is a better offensive showing is going to be important to this Minnesota Lynx team, but we just can't overstate that. That's easier said than done when you're playing against the number 1 defense in the league.
Absolutely. Well, you said there's a chance it could be 1-1 after game 2. We'll see, but I'm looking forward to another great game.
Absolutely.